Hi, Amy. Welcome to the Ear Wonder podcast.
Oh, it is such a pleasure to be here with you, Kalika. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
So, Amy, Eliza Wong, is a founder, speaker, and executive leadership coach and facilitator. And she just launched this fantastic book called Living on Purpose. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Living on Purpose, 5 Deliberate Choices to Realize Fulfillment and Joy. I really enjoyed reading this book and wanted to first have you introduce yourself because you have a fantastic background and we can just walk through how you transform people's lives. What do you think about that?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again. This is such a pleasure to dive into this with you. You're so fun to talk to. I'm
Aw.
really looking forward to this. So I am a leadership coach and I partner with leaders and teams on all things growth, transformation, and flow. And I've been doing this for over 10 years. Prior to this role that I am in now, this phase in my life, I was in tech. I worked at Sun Microsystems for 10 years and had various roles there, but quite technical. But it's interesting, I'm a coach now. And formally I'd say, yes, I've been a coach for 10 years, but the truth is I've been a coach for as long as I can remember. It goes back to as early as 5th grade, where just the way my brain worked. And so, this book has really been a culmination over the past. I mean, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was in year 2014. I knew exactly what this book needed to be, and I wanted to write it, but I knew I wasn't ready because I was still in the process of accumulating the client stories and the examples I was really working in the data and I was doing the research, but I knew exactly what this had to be. And so I could say it's been in formation since 2014, but you know, pulling it together, when I took it seriously, I'm like, all right, now is the time. I knew, again, a shadow of a doubt, I knew it was right at the end of 2019. Now is the time. I've got it. It's time to do this. And so it was really quite a magical process to bring it to life. And now here we are.
So, how does someone who graduates from UC Berkeley with a BA in mathematics write a book that's, so you're a very logical thinker, right? But this is such a heartfelt book. And not to say that mathematicians don't have heart, but
Right. Right.
how does someone do that? Take us to your closet.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's important to start by saying that, early on, at a very young age, I've always been fascinated with the concept of consciousness and anything having to do with intention and just fascinated by it. And so very quite spiritual growing up. My grandma and my mom were very metaphysical. And so I have these amazing memories of being together and talking about the nature of mind and how mind creates and your intention can create. I just wonderful, beautiful conversation. So that was always running in the background. Early on, also, I became very passionate about the study of math. And I think also too, because I'm a musician, I play piano. I started at 4 and so I've been playing all my life, and math and music, tend to go hand in hand. But what I started to recognize early was that I was just enamored with this ability to explain patterns and find meaning in data and concepts in an irrefutable way. So very black and white. And I just found it was almost spiritual for me as I went through the process of really diving into math, and particularly in college where, I'm doing pure math. And I recognized that it's really a language. It's a language. And I think what was happening was I was getting really good at being able to translate data in a way that could be understood. Because that's essentially what you're doing with math. And people laugh, I'll be out to dinner with friends and the bill comes and we're trying to divide in our heads. And I'm actually really bad at that. And they all look at me and they're like, Amy, but you were the math major. I'm like, but yeah, hold on. That's arithmetic. Like I might not be great at arithmetic, but when it comes to math, it's, we're taking really abstract concepts and data and we're trying to find patterns and we're trying to make sense of what is and essentially come up with meaning and then be able to articulate it in a way that is bulletproof. And so that is what I'd been practicing. And in my in high school and in college, I taught both music and math. I was teaching piano to students, and I was tutoring students, and I taught at UC Berkeley as well, math, calculus 1A for the STEM majors. And it was in college, a little bit of high school, but definitely in college, I realized that, oh my gosh, what I really love is to witness a student's argument, or what it is that they are perceiving, and listening to how they're thinking about the problem or the situation at hand. So I was so enthralled with what was it that they were perceiving, because I was listening for the stuff they didn't know that they didn't know, because that was what was getting in their way, which is way different than listening for what they didn't know. And what I saw very young was, that's not the problem for all of us. It's not the unknowns, because if you know what you don't know, you can solve that problem. It's the stuff we don't know that we don't know. So we don't know what question to ask. And so I got really good at listening for that in people's logic, in their body language, in their argument, in so much. And so I was doing that with math and with music. And so fast forward, everything that I did from that point forward was it always had that as a common denominator. I was exercising that. And so in my years at Sun Microsystems for 10 years, even though I was in either technical roles or program management roles, I would always end up in a situation where I was the translator, the go-between, trying to identify what was not known that we didn't know. And so then, after my first child, who is going to be 14 next week, which is crazy, when he was born, I had this really big breakthrough experience. And I recognized that there was a whole part of me I wasn't attending to. And I had no words to describe this kind of breakdown process I was going through, but I knew that something had to shift. And so that's where I had the big epiphany, divine download in my closet. And everything changed in a moment, which catalyzed this whole phase that I'm in my life now, which really has given birth to you talking always on purpose, and that. So yeah, that's how it all came together.
Yeah, and that epiphany was, don't figure it out, feel it out.
That's right. That is right. And it's, this is so simple. It's profound. What happened in my closet was, I was kind of at the lowest of lows, and I just couldn't make sense of anything. And it was at that moment I threw my hands to the side and I looked up, and I said to the ceiling, I give up. You show me the way. And I honestly, I have no idea who I was talking to. It was this surrender moment that was so organic, but I was immediately met with an answer that I didn't necessarily hear, but it reverberated through every cell of my body. And that was, Amy, you're going about this thing called life all wrong. It's not about figuring it out. It's about feeling it out. And really what this means is, everything we want as humans, whether it's, I want to go out to dinner to this restaurant tonight, whether that's, I want more money, I want a promotion, I want to start my own business, I want to retire early, I want everything we want and everything we think we want. It's actually not for the thing or the experience. We want it because we think it's going to make us feel a certain way. So underneath everything we think we want is a desired feeling state, but we never think about it that way. We stop at the thing and get stuck on the thing, chase the thing, but never check to see, does that thing actually map to the desired feeling state? Am I even clear about what it is I want to feel? And because we miss that piece of the puzzle, we all end up having great lives. Well, not all of us, but we can end up in this predicament where we end up with these amazing lives on paper. But then why do I feel so hollow? Why do I feel like something's missing when all the boxes are checked? And it's simply because we've been trained to figure it out. So we're figuring out how to get the next thing, not taking it all the way. Well, what is that? What are we thinking it's going to get us to that feeling state? And so that's really where that shift came from. And it just blew open my world about what was possible.
No, it's so true, because let's say one of the success metrics is getting that big house, right? But and if you go through this process, you figure out like, why do I want the big house? Well, I want the big house because I want to be respected or I want to entertain. And at the end of the day, it always comes down to you either want to love more or be loved, right?
Oh, yes. You know what? That is absolutely right. It does come down to love. And I tend to just, I mean, and this is an opinion, but I feel very strongly about it, but it all comes down to, we want freedom. We want peace of mind. We want a sense of fulfillment, and we want meaning. Right. But's most important, that feeling of love, that love of self, that feeling of wholeness of self, of completeness of self, and that connection with others. Yeah.
So choosing to feel it out, not figure it out is choice number one. Can you take us through the other five deliberate choices to
Absolutely.
realize fulfillment and joy?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first choice is figure it out, or choose to feel it out, don't figure it out. Second choice, and I love this one so much, a lot of people do too, but the second choice is choose to know that there is no way things or you should be, period. And there's so much in that, Kalika. Like, and the operative word here is should. There is no way things should be. And so this is a really fun, big discussion. And it's people are saying that this is their favorite chapter. This chapter is titled, I Should You Not. Right? So that's number two. Number three is, it's always working out for you. And this can be a hard one to swallow sometimes, because the crap of life that will come and take us down, it's like, wait, how is this working out for me? But really, we live in an existence of duality, right? So there's always going to be darkness, and we grow equally as, in the dark as we do in the light. So that's really about what wisdom is in that statement. It's always working out for you. The fourth one is, you are already whole and complete. And that's a big one, because so many of us are always after trying to fill the hole that we feel inside, right? And we entertain this sense of lack, like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, oh, I'm not as good as them, I'm not, imposter syndrome. So that's a big, big conversation, just to choose to know that you're already whole and complete. I mean, that's a massive unlock. And the fifth one is powerful, because it's a big distinction I make between two paradigms of thinking. And the fifth one is, choose to know, not believe, your worth. Yeah. And so there's a big, big, big difference between believing and knowing. And when you understand that difference and you harness the knowing instead of believing, then again, you get another big, big unlock in your ability to thrive.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that, because that was one thing that logically people are like, well, isn't believe the same as know?
Yeah. Oh gosh. And I would say, we could probably dissect this and it be a matter of semantics, but I'll present it as an argument here. So if you've got a belief, right? So let's say I believe it's a nice day. Now, there's a couple things that we instinctively know about that. So if I say I believe it's a nice day, then I've got these lenses on that have me believing it's a nice day. So I'm going to be tuned to be seeing evidence for that. But really what's going on here is that if I assert a belief, I believe it's a nice day, I don't just say that, right? I can't just assert that without something to back it up. So what's happening is that there are conditions, there are data points that are allowing me to assert this belief, right? So for example, oh, there's a nice breeze and there's no cloud in the sky, and there's the sun and people are out on the lawn. So therefore, I believe it's a nice day. But what's important here is that I need these data points, because you say, Kalika, might be from Antarctica, and you're like, oh my gosh, 75 degrees is going to be the death of me. Oh my gosh, there's too much sun. There is no shade. This is too hot. This is not a nice day, right? So there's this duality that comes in a belief due to the conditions that we need in order to assert said belief, right? So we've got this duality going on. And so when we have to assert a belief, we need conditions to back it up. Now, knowing, on the other hand, knowing is a choice you make oftentimes despite the evidence, right? Because how many times have you been in an argument with your partner or a good friend and you're like back and forth and then, no, I just know. And your friend goes, no, but, and you're like, nope, I just know. And then they present you with this evidence. You're like, nope, sorry, talk to the hand. I just know. And you assert a knowing despite the evidence. So that is a choice that is unconditional as evidence to prove that I was a good person. Well, great. Now I've got this light. But in order to see light, there needs to be dark, because light doesn't exist without dark. But if I see dark, now I've just proven I'm not a good person. So we enter into this very wobbly, very precarious situation where when our sense of self needs proof to be enough to feel okay, we'll never win. We will never, ever, ever win. And so really the freedom, the opportunity is to come to this unconditional knowing where that is, and now we get real deep, Kalika, because the moment you come here to this true unconditional knowing of wholeness and completeness, this ultimately is the desired feeling state that we are all after, that all desired goals map to, is that absolute feeling of unconditional wholeness and completeness, because that is the epitome of true unconditional self-love, which there is no more fulfilling experience.
I think that's so wonderful. And in your book, you also said that you read a lot of these books, even when you were younger, like Louise Hayes is one of them, who you love so much. And then you were reading like Course in Miracles, because I also, when we say belief, it is absolutely true. When there's a belief and there's a knowing, it's also very similar to being honest and telling the truth,
Yes.
Right. So you're honest that, yes, I believe that I need all these things. I need to have that Ivy League education, or I need to have this great job I need this big house, the electric car. That's honest, but the truth is you don't. The truth is you are on your hero's journey. You are already whole and complete. You have access to your own answers. And not only do you have that, you also deserve to look at other people in that way as well, too, which I think is really, really big.
Yeah. Oh, that is so well said. I love that distinction. I am such a sucker for distinctions. I live for making, the indistinct distinct and the invisible visible, because it just makes us so much more intentional. We're able to be more intentional. So I love that, the difference between honesty and truth. That's so, so powerful. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like the difference between being nice and being kind. There's subtleties there, but it's a very different thing, it's a tangential, but
Yes, because you can be disciplined, right? You can enforce if you're kind. Anyway, we can definitely go down that. I love your book because these are actual tools. You have these checklists, you have this process. And I think I love it because, this is where you have your mathematics brain. And it's not just inspirational. It's not just motivational. It actually, if someone can take this book and actually find a path.
Thank you. Well, that was my hope, was being able to merge this left brain thinking of mine, where I'm able to to take these concepts and articulate them in a irrefutable way, but with the right brain. So, I also have a master's in transpersonal psychology, and that actually came in that second part of my life when I woke up to feeling it out and not figuring it out. I realized there was a whole part of me I needed to attend to. And so inspiration completely led me to that field. And there was no strategy to studying that whatsoever. In fact, my husband, when I have this infant, and I tell my husband, I'm like, I totally know what I meant. I have to go get my master's in transpersonal psychology. And he looked at me like I had two heads. Like, what are you going to do with that? And I said, I don't know. I have no idea, but I know I'm meant to study it because I just know it. See, there it is. I just know. I have no evidence, but I just know. And I think it's the synthesis of those two things to be able to honor that truth comes in objective forms. And we use mathematics to really articulate the language of the universe. So we use that in order to understand what is and find truth in that way. But there's also another very real way to seek truth, which is that nonlinear, very subjective way. And that's where that transpersonal psychology degree really came to be. And so being able to mind both and then present, a message so that it could be understood and felt in both realms, I think that was really my biggest priority in writing this book.
And you speak to like some of the largest, like Fortune 50, Fortune 100 organizations. How do they take your work? It's spiritual.
Yeah. No, thank you for this question, because this came up in another podcast. I This is going to sound so cliche, but I meet every client where they're at. And I'll just point blank, the entry point for most of the work I have with all of the organizations I work with is the layer of communication, because this is really interesting for everybody. Everybody wants to get better at communication, because why? And we don't think about it this way, because everything's happening in this medium. Now, we don't think about it that way because we tend to just show up with our good intention, hope for the best, and then wonder why things fall apart. So there's so much that's happening in this medium of communication. And so because again, I love to translate, I love all things language and how it is that we understand through language, I got really good at this layer of communication. And so this is my area of expertise when it comes to my leadership coaching and the workshops I do. I'm coaching on effective communication skills and conversational intelligence and the neuroscience of trust and how do we come together. And so this is interesting. So the entry point's here, but here's the bigger story. This layer of communication is a symptom. Communication is a symptom of the relationship we have with ourselves. And so the way I see it, communication is an effect. And so when I start working with folks, we start with the effects first, because that's where I can get them to open up their eyes. And then depending upon just how receptive and how deep they want to go, then we go that deep. And so there are companies that just, we like it at this layer. Let's just give us all the tools to be really effective in how we communicate and create trust. Great. And then there are other amazing companies that are like, actually, there is a lot more going on. And if we get this deeper perceptual stuff right, oh, I get it, this is a lot easier. And so I'm minding how I dance with my clients in just by what it is that I'm hearing, how far I can push them, what is possible, what they need. And it's a dance more than anything. And it's a fun one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that there are so many different layers of communication. I watched one of your videos and you're saying that because every single person comes with their own baggage, but you don't know that, when you're communicating.
Oh yeah. No, everybody's coming with their own lens. And we tend to think that the world out here is objective, but everything we are experiencing is due to the lens that we hold. And that lens is the sum total of the beliefs, the interpretations, the experiences, we have a unique lens that we peer out to the world. And that lens gives rise to our experience, the color, the meaning, everything that we experience is due to that lens, and everybody has one. And so we think we're, relating apples to apples, but we're not. And when we forget that, that's where tension, that's really, honestly, that's where all the conflict comes from in all the ways in which we relate, for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the subjects you talk about is how trust is the ultimate currency. So there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening. Trust is a really big thing, because you need trust with your employees, you need trust with your partner, your business partners, your leadership team. How can someone gain trust quicker?
Oh gosh, how much time do we have? This is such a big conversation. I'm like, oh, I love this conversation. Well, I'll start by saying that it's really important to understand what trust really is. And we all innately get that trust is important and we want it. We all want it. But we tend to think it's an emotion or it's just the byproduct of liking each other. But really, what trust is, it is a neurological state in which we are optimized for our greatest thinking. It is a state of being in which we feel absolutely safe, connected with others, that bring our prefrontal cortex online, calms our survival brain, where we have access to amazing ideas, imagination, empathy, to be able to take disparate ideas, bring them together, solutions. So the reason trust feels so good is because we are in a state of thriving. We are not in a state of surviving. So those are the two differences. And so to the brain, that sense of trust and safety, belonging and connection with one another is a state of thriving. And in that state of thriving, we have access to amazing thinking. We can take risks. We can come together. We can do hard things. It's the good stuff. And we get that innately, but we often don't think about it as a currency. We just think about it as a byproduct. But I try to flip the switch for people. It's like, no, 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 no. We want to be thinking of this first, because if you don't have trust, you are not optimized. You can't do your best work. So in the state of distrust, you have your survival brain active. And in a state of distrust, cortisol is the hormone for distrust. And with cortisol in your system, the job of cortisol is to mute your prefrontal cortex, which is so unfortunate, because here you are, when you're in a state of distrust and you're not connected, the most brilliant part of your brain is not accessible. And so it works against us to be in states of disconnection and distrust when we're trying to solve problems, work together, and achieve big things. And so one of the ways, if we want to just dive right into a really powerful tool, I mean, because there's so much to offer, but my favorite tool, which can change a dynamic in a moment, is really, it's paying attention to the kind of listening that you are bringing right in the moment. And there are many ways in which we can listen. We can listen to confirm. We can listen to protect. We can listen to defend. We can listen to judge. And I would even say, and we can listen to understand, which actually doesn't do it. So here's what we want to do. Listen to connect. You want to listen to connect with the other person. And if you take that you shift into that listening, what changes in you neurochemically, what changes in them because of what they're perceiving, it will shift a dynamic instantaneously. And then it unlocks a lot. So that right there, that's the superpower tool. Listen to connect.
You know, what's interesting is because a lot of times leaders listen so that they can they already know what they're going to say, and they're just listening for that little pause so that they can just jump in and just say, like, they've already have this preconceived speech that they're going to say, right? They're not even listening.
No. Well, right? A lot of people are listening to figure out what to say next.
Yeah.
Or the big one is listen to be right. That is the big one. And so we've all been very practiced and become very good at being positional. We're really good at listening to defend and to prove a point of view and listen for a position, because that's how we advance ideas right there. And that's not a bad thing. We need to be positional at times. But if we genuinely want to create trust with one another, it takes being open, receptive, open to influence, curious, and really truly intending to connect with the other person and honor their point of view, their experience. And that is what creates the currency of trust. Yeah.
Well, I love that you say listening to connect, because once you listen to connect, then you can speak with a tone that connects as well, too.
Everything changes. Yeah. So what I'm referring to, this is the framework of conversational intelligence, which I am so passionate about this. It was founded by, her name is Judith Glaser, and she was just a tremendous thinker and coach, and she founded this entire field. And there's so much art and science and technique, and it's a whole combination of studies. But yes, it's when we listen to connect, we actually activate oxytocin within ourselves, which light up our prefrontal cortex. And when that happens, the person on the other side senses that receptivity, and then their brain lights up, and then they get that surge of oxytocin. Now, when you've got both brains open, now the possibilities are endless, right? Yeah.
And also, you know, because it's business, we know that it's not always like rainbows and unicorns. What happens if someone attacks you, or not, you know, like you go and you get into these uncomfortable conversations and you say to cool down your brain, but how do you do that?
Oh gosh. Well, the first step is to get out ahead of the trigger, because when someone attacks you, you're going to get triggered. And that's just going to happen. There is no human on the planet that's not going to have a neurobiological response to a threat, because the brain's always trying to keep you alive. So when you get that trigger and you get triggered, that is your most important point of opportunity, because if you can't get ahead of that trigger, then really the moment's lost. Because what happens is when you get triggered, your amygdala goes boink and activates, and it spews cortisol. Cortisol shuts down your prefrontal cortex. And now you don't have reason and logic and empathy and curiosity to meet that moment. And so that's when we end up reacting and then regretting what we did, right? And so in order to get out ahead of that, so that we don't end up in that situation, when we get triggered, what you want to do is you simply want to name it as soon as possible, from that non-judgmental place of, wow, check yourself. You're triggered. You just got triggered. You just got triggered. That non-judgmental place of, wow, you're triggered, not I'm so triggered right now, right? So it's a very different, very different reality. But what this is called in like the therapy circles, name it to tame it. So the moment you name it, you keep the prefrontal cortex on. So it allows the amygdala to calm down faster so that you can stay out ahead of the situation, so that you can meet it with compassion and with reason and objectivity, which you can't otherwise do when you've got, a lot of cortisol running through your system.
Yeah, and that's hard to do, especially when you have teenage daughters, teenage kids, right? Well, you ask a simple question. So, how's your day today? Why?
Yeah, yeah. Why? Yeah. Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. You know what I have to say? Kids are the ultimate test for all of these things, right? I call them my spiritual practice. That's where the rubber meets the road. Like, do
Yeah.
these techniques work? Okay, like, I got to try them out. Yeah, okay. I do it with my kids. Yes.
Yeah, and it does take practice, because sometimes in the moment, right, when someone's, sends you that email that, oh gosh, and then you're already having a bad day,
Oh,
I
yeah,
meditate, and I still feel this angst sometimes.
yeah, no, and that's the effect of cortisol, because cortisol, if we're having a bad day, that means we've got cortisol in our system, and cortisol acts like red glasses, right? So if I've got cortisol in my system, everything's going to look a little more threatening or negative, and so more apt to get triggered. And so it can be a challenge, and sometimes that instinct to just go take a nap, it's a really good one. Is you want to give yourself a chance to let that cortisol down regulate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have other questions regarding your book. Like, I know you've been working on this book. Like, how did you actually really just get it done? Because I mean, you're working all the time. Like, there are a lot of entrepreneurs are interested in writing books. How did you do it?
So I definitely had help in that. So I wrote the whole book myself, and out of a series of synchronous events, because I was feeling it out, because that's what happens when you feel it out. Synchronicity just totally leads the way. I had met Christine Carlson, who was the co-author of Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series, through a friend, and we just totally hit it off. And she was like, girlfriend, you have like 10 books in you. Let me help you birth your book. And so she kickstarted it by really believing in me. And we sat down, and I sat with her editor, and I had a whole outline. I'm like, here's what it would be. And they're like, great, go. And so they kind of held me accountable to getting going. And so that was right at the beginning of 2020. I remember going up to her place in Mount Shasta, and dove in, and I'm working, and I'm writing, starting the chapters. And so feeling good. And then what happens in March of 2020? The world shuts down. And so that was, I mean, everything slam on the brakes. Oh my God. So all my travel, all the conferences, all the things canceled. And then you're like, okay, well, now what? Well, now we can't even do anything on the weekend, because you love to entertain, can't do that. So what? I guess I just write. And so I started writing January 6th up in Shasta at Chris's place. I finished the manuscript on December 27th of 2020. And it took that long to really work through these chapters. And it was wonderful, because I had Chris and Deb is our editor, just by my side. And I kind of considered them like bumper bowling, right? Because I would get going, and then she would read a chapter, and it's like, oh yeah, but maybe we need to move that part here. Right. Why didn't I think of that? Right. So it was so invaluable to have expert eyes on this as I was going through the process, because the way I feel about it, if I had sat down to write out this book and didn't have their guidance, I would have been 1 degree off. And I would have ended up in Jamaica when I wanted to be up in Seattle, and so that really was the process for me. So highly recommend for anyone that really wants to write a book, just, you have to start, because you'll never feel ready. And ready is a choice, not an emotion. You just have to start. And if you really want to take it serious, find an expert that can hold you accountable and provide the guidance, because it's a whole different, if you're not a professional writer but you like to write, it's a whole different world. And to have access to that expertise, really, it provided me a tremendous peace of mind and a lot of motivation to keep going. Because I think if I didn't have that, there would be a lot of question in my head. Is this good? Is this right? So that's what I would say.
And she wrote such a beautiful foreword as well too,
Oh, she
right?
did.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so wonderful. And you talk about synchronicity. So is this what happens when you start feeling it out?
Oh my gosh.
Synchronicity?
100% yes. And this is where it's going to sound super woo woo, but it's not woo woo. It's just your lens changes, because if you're tuning into inspiration and you're really listening for that feeling where, oh, that's a great idea. Oh my gosh, I must do this. Yeah. Oh, I like that. And it's that feeling of inspiration that lights you up. When you take that path, I call it the path of least resistance to the path of most abundance. And where you'll start seeing synchronicities is when you start following that feeling, particularly when it doesn't make sense, because that is feeling it out versus figuring it out. Because figuring it out would be, oh, but Amy, this doesn't make much sense, right? Because my husband could have said, Amy, this doesn't make sense. You're trained in this field. This doesn't make sense. So of course it doesn't make sense, but it feels amazing. And in that series, when you're feeling the amazingness, you have no resistance in your equation. And when you have no resistance in your equation of life, you have access to see things and experience things that you wouldn't otherwise experience, because your bandwidth is all leached out, it's all jammed up with resistance. And so synchronicity is absolutely a byproduct of feeling it out and following your inspiration. Yeah.
So you put in a lot of neuroscience into your talks and into your material. And I don't know if you're familiar, I'm sure, with Lisa Feldman
Yeah. Oh,
Barrett.
yeah.
Yeah. And then
Absolutely.
she has that TED talk about emotion and how emotions and feelings are a little different. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between feeling and emotion?
You know, I'm gonna let I'm gonna so not in that expert way that Lisa could. And so, but what I will say is that, you know, in order to truly live with purpose and intention, to be on purpose, to claim the life you were born to live, and to feel to really choose thriving over surviving, we have to recognize and honor that we are gonna have these sensational, emotional, feeling experiences. All of us have different relationships to these feeling experiences. There are some of us that really honor them, and then there are some of us that can't even feel them because they were repressed so much early on. So all of us have this different relationship and an idea of what these feelings are. I like to say that these sensations, whether they be feelings or emotions, I'll use them synonymously right now. It's information. It's simply information telling me about what it is that I'm focusing on right now. And that's so important, because whatever it is that I choose to focus on is going to determine my experience. So very similarly, like if we finish up here today and you're done and you want to chill out, you turn on the TV because you want to just veg. And let's say you turn on the TV and all of a sudden there's a horror film. You're like, I don't want to watch this. Right? What do? You change it to something else because you don't like the way it makes you feel. So we do this instinctively with many of our inputs, but we forget to do that with ourselves and our own focus. And so whatever it is that I'm focusing on is going to give rise to my feeling state. So I like to work backwards. These feelings are not unwanted. As intense as they might be, whether it's despair or joy, it's information about how I'm navigating and what I'm focusing on right now.
And sometimes people don't trust their feelings. Why is that?
That's a great question. Why it is that, and gosh, we could come up with so many hypotheses as why that might be true for folks. And it's trauma plays a big part, and PTSD can play a big part. And we just don't want to feel that pain again that we experienced when the trust was broken. And really, what I talk about in my book, it really all comes down to this fear of rejection, this fear of disconnection, this lack of trust, because rejection, disconnection is completely synonymous with lack of safety, which really maps to great threat in our brain. And so, at the end of the day, if we're afraid of something, it generally maps to, I'm afraid of the negative perception, or that's going to mean this. And then that means I'm not going to be connected with people, which means I'm going to die. And so it's, again, there's a lot to this conversation, but but the reality is true. There are folks that are afraid, afraid of what they feel. Yeah.
And you're also a coach, a leadership coach. And, coaching is going to be a $32 billion industry. How does someone who's an entrepreneur, someone who wants to be a coach, get to be a coach?
Gosh, there's so many routes to take in order to become a coach. But if you want to do this work, I would say meet with as many coaches and try it out. Get a feel for what is this like on the other side of coaching. And it could be that, hey, I've experienced coaches. I love this so much. I want to do that myself. Then great. The power of that. So after you get that exposure and you get an idea of how it feels and what's possible and the different approaches, then it's a matter of really feeling out, not figuring out, but feeling out what path, what program, how do I want to study this? And I highly recommend going through a solid program that feels amazing, rather than, instead of, oh, that sounds right. You want it to resonate with your core. You want it to feel amazing. And you definitely want to go through a program because, even though I was coaching as early as, say, 5th grade, right? in my innocence, I just didn't know it. There is so much to this amazing art and science and practice. And it is so invigorating to go through the coaching process. So to become a coach, oh my gosh. I remember joking with my cohort back in the day when we were all in training. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, can you imagine, like, if everybody went through this program, like, the world would be such a better place, right? Because you learn like what it means to really connect, to be present, to listen, to be curious. And so much is possible. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's true. You can't coach someone else beyond a place that you haven't been yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
Embody the tools.
That's right. And to be clear, like, in coaching, we're really unlocking possibility, and we're helping people. And in the way I put it, I'm helping them find what they don't know that they don't know, so that they can discover their unknowns and create those bridges for themselves. Because that's true growth and transformation, right? Rather than me saying, here, let me take your hand and walk you over this bridge. It's helping people see that themselves. And that takes, it takes going through the process yourself. And then it takes really diving in to learn what you need to do to make that happen.
Yeah, it is so true because, and there's a difference between being a coach and being a consultant, right? So a consultant is the one that tells your time on your watch, right? They're telling you what to do, but a coach provides you with the tools so that you can take it and navigate and flourish in your life.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's right.
So I know we only have a couple more minutes left, but I wanted to dive into your mom. You're also, the founder of Always on Purpose. Yeah. How do you do it all? Do you have a morning routine?
Yeah. I wish I could say it's due to my doing, but I am so blessed with the most amazing husband who truly is my best friend, and we are partners through and through. And tremendous children who are just kind, dear, wise, lovely souls. And we all like each other, which I think really helps. So I've got a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old. And, my husband, he's a big time entrepreneur. He owns bars in San Francisco. He used to own big restaurants. He also owns a huge wholesale bakery. And I mean, the man is nonstop, nonstop. I think the magic for us, and we spend all the downtime together. So we're all up together. We're doing the morning routine together. We eat dinner as a family without fail every single day. And I actually have my husband to thank for that because he's a chef and cooking for him is so easy that it's just every night is delightful, right? So we all sit down, we have an amazing meal. And then we have this routine. I have to say, I love this. After dinner, and the kitchen is clean, we all hop on the couch and cuddle and we eat dessert or fruit, and we're always watching some show, some either like whether it was a whole Schitt's Creek series or Ted Lasso or whatever it might be. And we push it till about 9:30 bedtime, and then we'll push it like, okay guys, we got to stop, we got to go to bed. So that I have to say, we get our quality time in that way, because we're all super busy, but it's also just being really present when we're together, which that is a practice. Yeah, got to put the phone away.
I think that you're also so lucky because there's so many women entrepreneurs that I talk to, or male entrepreneurs, it doesn't matter, having a significant partner that supports you. Like the other day, I told my husband, you know what, I would marry you again. Like it makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, and I need to tell, I'm thinking about this. I need to go tell my husband this as soon as I just need to thank him so much more. I mean, he is always behind the scenes. I mean, for example, so my book has come out, and he did all the work. He's like, you need merch. And so he was like, he did all the journals and the bookmarks, and he's made the banners for the book launch party next Saturday. And I mean, he is on it, and anything that I might need, he's like, no, I got it. And he takes care of it. And he's so supportive. Yeah, it truly is. I am absolutely blessed.
Do you have any tips for women entrepreneurs who are seeking that? How did you find him as a partner?
Oh my gosh, this is such a lovely story. So, when we met, so I was 24. Check this out. I'm 24 and he's 38, and he's got one of the biggest, hottest restaurants in San Francisco. And I'm, working at Sun Microsystems, and I would go to his one restaurant and I loved it. And I would be there with girlfriends because the happy hour was amazing, because they had over 100 wines by the glass and 1,200 wines by the bottle, and the dollar oysters. I mean, it was wonderful. And apparently, I would show up and he would get really excited from behind the scenes. He'd be like, oh, she's here. And the staff just loved that, because he's Mr. Serious and but he'd act all giddy when I would show up. And I think I give us both a lot of credit, because he sensed something in me. He was like, I just love her authentic energy. And he just had this feeling like, that is my partner. And so the staff got us to meet, and very quickly, I mean, literally within months, he had my ring being made. He knew, like, this is my wife. And very early on in our dating, I had the thought, this is my husband. This is the man I'm going to marry. And it was just this feeling of being home. And that's where, and of course we're going to have options at that point in our life. We're like, okay, well, this seems like a suitable partner. This person seems like a suitable partner. What's the right partner? And I remember having a very, very, very clear conversation with myself where, like, I want to be with someone where I feel supported in all aspects of conversation, not like I have to defend my point of view. I want to feel like conversation is so welcome and flowing, not like it was clear to me. And I had to go off this feeling sense that I wanted to be with someone where we saw things really eye to eye, and we colored it, we added color. And so now looking back, we've been married 16 years. I always tell people, you're going to fall in and out of love and lust. But the thing that is so important is to have admiration for one another. We genuinely admire each other. I'm always learning from something from him. And, he would say that he's always learning something from me. And so there is that deep mutual respect and admiration that I think when you can have and cultivate and sustain and protect that, I think you've got it. Yeah.
So you're absolutely right, because researchers say that if they take a look at some couples and they can sense some type of resentment,
Contempt. Yes.
contempt, right?
Contempt. Yeah. 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 Then it's
Right?
over.
It's over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being able to treat them also as whole and complete, and that they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, I think is really the key as well too.
Oh, absolutely. And who's so good at, Esther Perel, who doesn't love Esther
Oh,
Perel, right?
so good.
Amazing. Such a good job at introducing us to this idea that we really want to treat our partner as a mystery. The moment we think we know them, we kind of get into trouble. So to always stay curious and in that space of that spaciousness, I think really is key to keeping that really powerful partnership going.
Yeah, because we are on a journey together, and just
Mhm.
might as well just make it fun,
Yeah. Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. A journey that is going to keep going and that never really ends. There's nowhere to get. That's right. That's right. So have fun.
So
Yeah.
if a company wants to book you or they want to get your book, what's the best way for them to
Yeah.
contact you?
Yeah. So the best way is to go to my website, which is alwaysonpurpose.com. And there, I've got a lot of information about the keynotes I do, the workshops I do, coaching, but best truly is to just reach out personally because even though I've got a lot of stuff on my website, like I've got general themes, but almost everything that I end up doing in an engagement is really rather designed and it's really designed to meet exactly where that team or that company is to take them to the next level. So my website, alwaysonpurpose.com, is definitely the place to go. But I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. That is really the only social platform I'm on is Amy Eliza Wong. All just one word. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I know that the book just came out May 24th, right?
Yes, Tuesday.
Yeah. I mean,
Woo!
congratulations.
Thank
I
you. And
mean,
it's been doing so well. I'm an Amazon bestseller. Oh gosh,
yeah.
it's so great.
It is
Yeah.
such a great book. I highly recommend all entrepreneurs to read it if you want to have fulfillment and joy. Who doesn't want
Oh.
that?
Who doesn't want more time, energy, and joy in their lives, right?
Exactly.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. And everyone, alwaysonpurpose.com, and please buy our book, Living on Purpose.
Thank you.